Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be talking about season 3 of the show, The Bear. Fun fact, Maddie Matheson, who plays Fack, is a producer on the show and is actually a chef in real life. This season came out in 2024 and stars Jeremy Allen White, Edebiri, and Ebon Moss-Bachrach, and was created by Christopher Storer. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The bear follows Carmen, aka Carmi, aka Bear, who is set on getting a Michelin star after turning his brother's beef sandwich shop into a fancy restaurant. While dealing with this, he is also dealing with family trauma and PTSD from working at some kitchens. The Bear is a show that is classified as a comedy drama, and I often forget that there is comedy in this show based on how stressed it makes me. It has similar vibes to Hell's Kitchen, Succession, or Whiplash. Jeremy Allen White plays Carmi, aka Bear, which I didn't know if that was made clear in prior seasons that that was the nickname that was given to him by his family. And I was like, oh, hence the title of the show and his new restaurant. He is very intense and struggles a lot from past trauma and is trying to be the best, but that still doesn't justify his actions. He created a ridiculous list of non negotiables that was just super unrealistic, one of them being daily menu changes, which did nothing but cause more tension. I was actually surprised no one hit him with a pan this season with the way that he was talking to people. He is this type of person that will blow up on you and then apologize, but at some point the apologies start meaning less and less. For his chefs that kind of, are used to it, they just take it and some kind of push back, but others, like Claire, who don't work in the kitchen with him and who are not in that same mindset as him, decide that it's probably best to just stay away from him. I loved how the show lets us see bits of his past and most of the time just gave us visuals without much dialogue to take it all in and see how it affects him today. His family life, more specifically his mom, seemed to cause him so much mental stress because of her narcissism, and you can tell how that was something that has been carried with him. From his past, we see how even though he is a great chef and uses skills he learned from other great chefs, he has also taken some of the bad habits from some of his teachers and mimicked those. I'm glad he confronts the chef who caused him so much pain, and the guy doesn't even apologize but says that he should thank him. Carmi is a great chef, there is no doubt about that, but this man needs to seek a therapist. Edebiri not only acted as Sydney this season, but also directed the Tina-focused episode. Swept all of the awards last year, and watching this season proves why. Sydney is being pressured to become a partner in this restaurant and is given a contract to sign, but is unsure if she wants to sign her life away. With Carmi's constant blowups and the constant family arguing, she understandably questions it, and it doesn't help that she gets an offer from someone else that is better. But even with all the pain and stress of working at the Bear, it's how she even got in a position to be able to field offers of running a kitchen, and these people have become like a family to her. Sydney faces that dilemma where sometimes holding on just causes much more pain, and the decision is stressing her out. And in the final episode of the season, she has a breakdown, but we still don't know what the plan is for her future. Natalie is Carmi's sister and co-owner, played by Abby Elliott, who gets a lot of screen time this season. She is having a baby while handling more of the operation side of things, which is difficult when Carmi has all of these great ideas but doesn't think about the money, and Nat has to try to make it all work. For Carmi, I feel like Nat is not the stepmother, but the mother who stepped up. Their mother failed them, and in one of the sweetest scenes in episode 1, Nat gives him money, and even though he refuses to take it, she hides it in his jacket. You could always tell that they were close because she looks out for him, and in flashbacks, you see that she is also the one who let him know that his brother had passed. It was sad when she actually needed someone. No one answered. And as much as she hated it, she had to call her mom. And it showed how nearly anyone else would have been a better option than Donna. When Nat has her baby, her mom Donna is there. And that episode made me annoyed because Donna doesn't know how to read the room. She only wants to listen to herself. Throughout the season, we see how Nat doesn't want her baby to be like her mom, and that is one of the main stresses for her, and it's highlighted in this episode. Donna does have some good tips while, Nat is going through labor, but she also stresses out Nat. And in that moment when you are in immense pain, I think the last thing you want is someone stressing you out and making it worse. Lionel Boyce plays Marcus, who I often feel like is an underrated part of the team as a pastry chef. His mom died at the end of the season before, and he's dealing with that, but I love seeing how he has such an interest in different baking recipes that he finds in Carmi's old notebooks, and on his own time, he practices these recipes and perfects them. As a black man who has always had an interest in baking and finds it oddly relaxing, I just really enjoy Marcus and his willingness to always try something and perfect the recipe. And when he notices a problem, he has an idea of what the solution can be to make the next batch even better. Marcus is probably one of the chillest people on this show, and he is often left out of the screaming, which is great. I love that even after all that he has been through, he is, still sad, but, he has the support of his team. And while he doesn't like to talk about his grief, they talk to him in different ways, which lets him not only see the negative side of grief. One scene I love this season that involved Marcus, but very indirectly, was when Computer was telling Nat that he was disposable and that, they can get rid of him to save money. I think it was one of my favorite line deliveries of the season because Natalie tells Computer, I respect you and I've known you for a long time, but if you fuck with Marcus, I will murder you. I was like shocked, but also, yes, correct. That's how you should stand your ground. It was nice to see that even through all the angst and arguing that goes on at this place, they were still a family who showed up for each other whether present or not. Oliver Platt plays Cicero, also known as Uncle, who has a close relationship with the Berzatto siblings and is the key investor and father figure. He is one of the people I feel like can truly reel in Carmi and be like, hey, you're spending too much money or you're being an asshole. I think he understands how stressed Carmi is, but also has to remind him that there is money on the line. His. He has a bad deal in which he loses money this season, and he doesn't tell Carmi, but that really leaves the fate of the restaurant up in the air. One scene with him that I loved is when he is talking to Sid, and he's saying how he wishes he could have done more for them when they were kids. And Sydney reminds him that the important thing is that he was present, which is something that is needed for people. He has a friend named Computer who manages his finances, and he was not my favorite. But it was interesting to see him trying to balance the logic that Computer brings about the restaurant with the love that he has for Carmi and his restaurant dreams. Cousin, aka Richie, is played by Ebon Moss-Bachrach, and it's always amazing to see how much character growth he has had over the seasons. In this season, we get more time to see how co-parenting is something that is working for him, but how losing his ex is still something he's not 100% over, and he is being pressured to go to her wedding. One scene that was sad to me was him asking Nat if he should back out of his daughter's life so he doesn't confuse her because of his ex-girlfriend's, fiance also being around. You can tell that there is no ill will for Richie in this moment, and he wants what's best for his daughter, and he just doesn't know what that is. And Natalie tells him that this is not the answer to that problem. The answer would probably be the opposite, which is just being around more and, just talking to your daughter and, being a parent. Since season one, Cousin and Carmi have clashed, which seems to stem from the fact that Richie was always at the beef and spent so much time around Carmi's brother, Mikey, and knew how to run things and kind of what Mikey wanted. And while they were financially doing bad, everyone loved the place and the sandwich. And with Carmi, he comes in trying to change so much and has a lack of respect for the past, and Cousin isn't afraid to push back. There is a whole episode with them pretty much arguing the entire time. And I was like, wow, this is a lot of yelling. And then more and more of like the staff come in as the argument is going on and they're just kind of watching. I love how Richie manages the front of house operations and how when we see him talking to his employees, he treats them with respect and doesn't talk to them like a boss, but more of like a peer and has empathy with them. I just really like to see how over the course of the show, he has become more mature and how he has become a person that if you were working at that restaurant and he was your boss, you would respect him. Tina has been one of my favorite characters on the show, who is played brilliantly by Lisa Colon-Zayas. And last season, she got time to shine, and this season, she got even more time to shine, which was lovely for me. Tina's growth over the season, starting with her constantly challenging Sid to now welcoming her help and mentorship, is something that I love to see. Tina is someone you would want to work with because while, yes, she can be stubborn, she will take time to learn something perfected, and you won't have to worry about her and like her work. I will say that Tina is too hard on herself, but I think Sid reminds her that it's okay to make mistakes. And even if, you do make a mistake, we can go through it again, even if Carmi is like back there acting a fool. She does farmer market runs for the restaurant. And through her, we see that these farmers are struggling because there is a lack of available places to grow produce and so that they have to grow them together. I love how Tina still gets some stuff from these farmers markets, and it might not be stuff that they're using, and she experiments and sees what she can do with it. It kind of reminded me of like how people who come from backgrounds where they weren't raised with a lot of money, sometimes had to take what they had and make a meal out of it. And that's something that reminded me, when I saw Tina doing that. She might not have all the ingredients that she wanted, but that doesn't mean that she's just going to sit here and like twirl her fingers. She went in the kitchen, tested out a little recipe, and found something that, could potentially be a winner on the menu. We get an episode about Tina titled Napkins, which is also directed by Io, and it's one of the best in this season. Tina is a character I always wanted to know more about, and in this episode, we get to see how she ended up at the beef. At first, I thought she was working two jobs, and then it was like, wait, her hair is different, and this just doesn't seem like the present timeline in the show. We see how Tina gets laid off and she's struggling to find a job, which eventually leads her to have a breakdown inside the beef. And after a conversation with Mikey, he offers her a job. This episode showed how you can give so much time and effort to a company and they can drop you quickly. How hard it is for Tina, who is in her 40s, which isn't old, but some companies are resistant to hiring people in that age range. How companies want degrees to do stuff that doesn't actually need a degree. How, with technology changes for those who don't have experience with online job boards and did cold delivery of resumes, have to adapt or get left behind, and how easy it is to get discouraged after you feel that you've been doing everything right with no luck. I love seeing it through Tina's eyes and how, as a parent and a spouse, she felt she wasn't contributing and was failing her family, even though she wasn't, because she was trying. It's something that I feel like a lot of people, especially in America, are feeling right now with companies constantly doing layoffs. And it's something that is familiar to people that have gone through a layoff in the past. It just further highlights how a stressful situation like that, finding a new job that will pay you what you're worth is hard. And Tina really goes through it. But at the end of the day, what ends up paying off is her honesty. The show gets labeled as a comedy sometimes, and I often forget that it is a comedy and a drama until I remember the facts. Supposedly, there are 9 of them, but we mostly see Teddy and Neil with a small cameo from a new member that we have not met before, played by John Cena. And them together or apart lead to hilarious scenes. I think one of the funniest was Neil serving this deconstructed soup, which I get it, it's kind of stupid. And the veggies were in a cup, the broth was on the side, and all of this was on a tray. And he explains to the customers what it is, and he pours the broth into the veggies for the customers, and everything's on the tray still. And then he takes the food back with him into the kitchen, and he's just so proud, showing them all of this only for Carmi and Richie to tell him that you need to actually give the food to the customers. It's not just a performance. The facts bicker a lot, which sometimes is annoying, just because they do it at the wrong times, like when a photographer from a newspaper there, are trying to impress is there, but they are still fun to watch on screen. This show is filled with so many cameos from Jamie Lee Curtis, John Mulaney, John Cena, Olivia Colman, Will Poulter, and Josh Hartnett, to name a few. One recurring cameo that I am always happy to see, then I'm immediately sad about, is John Barenthal as Mikey, who we see in a lot of the flashbacks. In every scene with him in it, you see why so many people love him and why they are so resistant to the change that Carmi tries to implement. He might not have been the most serious or made the best business decisions, but he made people feel seen, helped so many, and was just a joy to be around. He didn't understand what Carmi was doing with his culinary pursuits sometimes, but he always supported him. With all of the family crap that went down, I think you need someone like Mikey, but his character also highlights how even the person doing the most smiling and helping can still be struggling. I think the show does a great job of handling his death in a very respectable way, and they make you love the character through the flashbacks, but then you are sad when you get back to the present day and realize that unfortunately he's not there. This show gives us a look this season at how getting a new restaurant off the ground is stressful, while also showing how an iconic restaurant closing can be emotional for more people than expected. Besides running your kitchen and making sure the front of house is set, you have to deal with reviewers when starting a new restaurant that can make or break you, and you have no control over what they say. We see the stress that comes with that because, as much as you would like to ignore it, you have to be mindful of how people perceive your restaurant since reviewers might influence customers. When it comes to closing a restaurant, they have a big dinner, also called a funeral, and you see all of the people that restaurant has helped during their career, and how if you're making a new restaurant, it makes you nervous because if a restaurant that has been successful for so many years can shutter, what's stopping yours from doing the same? Rarely do I watch a show and the first episode sticks with me as much as the first episode of this season did. I don't know if I was tired of talking to people or what, but the lack of dialogue was just something that I felt like I needed in the moment and made me enjoy the episode more. It showed us Carmi's journey, starting with him leaving for New York, and we got to see him having experiences with so many chefs that were positive and also some that were negative, like the one with David Fields, who I must say, it took me a long time to realize that that was Joel McHale. It's crazy to me how you can have so many good experiences, but you remember the one really bad one. Carmi seems to be battling even, in the kitchen in these flashbacks, how his family life has influenced him because there's a scene where he is kind of snapping and starting to scream at someone. And as nice as Chef Terry is, Chef Terry shuts that down and calls for silence in her kitchen. Chef Terry seemed like she saw the talent Carmi had, but also could see he had been through so much. This episode helped to explain further the family dynamic, Carmi's OCD, how he has so many connections, and how cool and uncool it can be to be a chef. We see what happened when his brother died in real time, which made me emotional all over again, and see how Carmi couldn't bring himself to go inside the funeral. It switches to the present as well to see how everyone is dealing with the events of the previous season's finale and how there is just dysfunction in the kitchen. The episode was well lit and pretty, and we get to see some cool experiences new chefs go through, not only with cooking, but also with hand cleaning after a service, which just seems rough. One thing I was not expecting was for them to weave in Sydney in the story about Carmi's past, but it was cool to see how she ate a dish of Carmi's when he was a chef and she was just exploring her love for food. I mentioned cameos before, and one thing I failed to mention is while, yes, lots of great actors have cameos in this season, the other thing I found really cool is that there are a lot of cameos from real life chefs. It's cool to see chefs in a show about chefs and restaurants. It's a small detail, but I found it fantastic to include some people who have to deal with these stresses all the time and give them a moment to shine. The show has a lot of static shots and it really lets you sit with the scene. And I noticed in most episodes, we stay in one location for most of the episode. Both of these things really make the show even more stressful because it just makes you feel that you are in the moment with them, where everyone is screaming or sad because you are just sitting there with these people and their grief. There are even some cool long shots where we see people going from the kitchen to the restaurant floor, which I wasn't expecting, but I loved it nevertheless. I think the way the show is filmed and the lighting really helps evoke the feeling that they want and also let you see why some of these places are considered fancy. It was lovely to see how people are trauma bonded in the last episode when they are all having dinner at Ever one last time and the party ends at Sid's. Like these people may not have worked together, but many of them went through similar situations, and it's a great conversation starter talking about their experiences in kitchens. This is a perfect showing in my mind of how people make friends at work or with people in similar fields because you guys either have shared experiences or similar ones. And I think the worst experiences are the ones that stand out the most, unfortunately, and they increase the likelihood of, them coming up in a conversation. My favorite part of the season was the first episode and the one about Tina. I've spoken about these already, so I won't dive too deep, but they both reminded me why I love this show and how seeing this restaurant run is interesting, but seeing stories about the people working there is more interesting and really helps you understand them more. The Bear season 3 is as stressful as ever, but still has the emotional beats that will have you shedding a tear. The cast is amazing, and even though I feel my blood pressure going up while watching this show, I am super invested and love seeing these characters and what they have to go through. The season ends on a cliffhanger, which has me wondering what's next. So, Hulu, FX, whoever, go ahead and let's drop this next season. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.